If you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what your position is here at Hand.
I'm William Judge. I'm an 8th grade science teacher at Hand Middle School in Columbia. I taught high school science in Cleveland, Ohio before my wife and I moved down here in August.
Sweet. All right. So, how have you seen bullying play out in your school and in your classroom?
So, we talked about before just a few minutes ago, like you hear these horror stories, from like the 70s, 80s, 90s, like Freshman Friday. We're gonna stuff a freshman in a trash can. We're gonna put his head in the toilet. And yeah, that stuff totally happened. That stuff was real, but I haven't seen that in my teaching experience like ever. Fights happen, but that's usually like a mutual participation. It's going to start getting loud. Let me close this.
Okay.
Is this on?
Yeah, that's
Cool.
one.
I'm back. So there's like less like let's gang up on somebody and beat them up, and I think that's what people's minds automatically go to. You think of like Saved by the Bell, the TV show from the 90s, like, hey, how can we, mess with Screech today? I don't really see that, but what I do see is more like intimidation type stuff, like maybe a student will give a look to another student who's inferior. A lot of other things too come off like they're friendly or just kind of jovial joking, if that makes sense. And I think that it actually takes a bigger toll on the students because they're not stupid. They know that they're being bullied. They know that they're not actually friends with the group that is, or the individual that's bullying them. But the hard part about it as a teacher is that the students who are bullying are not outrightly breaking rules. Like I can't write a student up for giving another student a look or for laughing at another student because when you bring it up, all they say is, well, we were just laughing together. So if they're not outrightly breaking a rule, it becomes very, very difficult to take action as a teacher. So I think it's a teacher's responsibility or a school's responsibility to educate students on the effects of bullying, what bullying looks like, and you need to build a culture that hates bullying, so to speak, from the bottom up. Like students need to buy into it because teachers hate bullying, parents hate bullying. We know the effects of it, but 8th graders, high school kids don't.
Gotcha. So, does your school or this district have like a bullying prevention program in place, like across the board, or is it like a teacher by teacher basis? What do you guys do?
I think to eliminate bullying across the board, students need to take initiative. It's one thing for a student to hear it from an adult and then put it into practice. I mean, that's really difficult for an 8th grader to do. But if there are communities in a school, whether it's clubs or leadership organizations that students could get involved in, and then taking those individual organizations and having them make kind of like their autonomous stand for bullying, so to speak, I think that could help. I think that it's just wishful thinking to think that it's going to come from the top down. Like, yes, I think teachers and administrators need to be on board and they need to support students in that who are trying to eliminate bullying, but I do think it will take a few good men, if you will, or good 8th graders to stand up and get their friends on board with that. And maybe it's our job as educators to locate and empower those student leaders to do that. Whether that be through bullying education, but like I said, I do think it needs to come from the student level as opposed to just the teachers and the administrators.
Well, I appreciate you being on camera with me today.
Thanks, man. Like I said, students need to learn to take responsibility. I mean, I could preach, I could give a friggin' sermon to my students about bullying, and if there is not like a desire for them to stop, like, ultimately it comes down to like, am I going to make my friends laugh and make a kid's life miserable, or am I going to rise above that?
Yeah.
And I think that logistically, like, I don't know, dude.
Okay, and the last question that I have is, what do you think that it's going to take to kind of decrease bullying across the board across the United States?
I need time to think about it, but
Okay.
be good. So I think that consistency is key. Like if as teachers or as a school or as a district, we're going to put these policies, we're going to make these anti-bullying initiatives at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of the semester. They really do need to stick. What I tend to see is like everybody is on board, for the first several weeks, and then we just tend to kind of forget about it. They're not brought up again. Students forget about it, and then we're back to square one. So I think consistency is key, and then if we're consistent, we can continue to take steps forward in the bullying realm.
Gotcha. So what role do you think that parents play in this whole scheme of bullying?
I think parental involvement is key. I've worked in two different types of schools. I've worked in a suburban upper middle level high school and an urban middle school, and bullying happens at both. I think that students who have involved parents are more aware of the effects of bullying. I mean, I don't know of any parents, maybe you do, that tell their students to go bully. It just doesn't happen. And I think also that parents need to act as advocates for their child if they are being bullied, because students might be afraid to stand up for themselves. So parents need to be able to call the school, call the guidance counselor, set up a meeting to talk about what's going on. Hello. Yeah, so every district has their own policy in place, and then we'll kind of zoom in and look at what schools do individually to prevent bullying. First off, at Richland 1, we're required to hang up posters, which Walt will show you guys in a few minutes, and every teacher has to post this in a place that's visible as students walk in the door. They say bust bullying, and there's a list of steps that students can take to bust bullying. And we have to go over that with every student, every class in the beginning of the year when they first get here, every year. Another thing on more of the local level, like in our school, we do something in the beginning of the year called Make a Friend Friday for like the first 9 weeks, where you're supposed to reach out to somebody new every Friday to become their friend. And the teachers buy into that, the teachers support it. And I don't know how that would work in a high school, but certainly in the middle grades, students tend to buy into that as well.
Sweet. So if you see an instance of bullying, like someone getting shoved into a locker, how would you respond to that according to your school guidelines?
So if I saw physical bullying, like somebody getting pushed, again, like you don't see that often, at least not at our middle school. And maybe that's because we have done a good job of kind of cracking down on the little things. But at Richland 1, we have like a very strict policy that teachers need to follow. We call them referrals, and I can show you a referral in a few minutes, where there's like a list of 50 different offenses that a student can violate, and you just kind of follow the book and then hand it to administration. Something that's important, just a side note for teachers, make sure you document everything. I also, this is just kind of how I use my autonomy in my classroom. If I accuse a student of something or catch a student something, I make them write down what I say they did or what they think they did. That way I have student documentation as well as my my own professional documentation as well.
So do you think, like, from what you've seen in your career so far, these prevention programs are effective? Like, do you think the middle schoolers can kind of buy into them and go with it?
I gotta think about that for a second.